Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle CIO Leadership Summit. My name is Brittany Sullivan with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials and information. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would love to introduce our speaker, Jack Maloney, Solution Leader Lean IX Americas at SAP. We're excited to have Jack with us for a thought leadership titled Building a Resilient and Agile Enterprise Architecture Strategy. Welcome, Jack, and over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Brittany. And again, welcome everybody. So as mentioned, my name is Jack Maloney. I lead our Lean IX organization here for the Americas. And really, we want to sort of cover off today, how enterprise architecture, really works in this new day and age. How we navigating the concepts of AI, as well as how we manage that architecture that some of us have had for multiple years as well. And we can see that users and organizations that you manage, we're caught in the middle as CIOs. We have the ability and we have the challenge to keep the lights on, understanding and managing our current and our legacy environments, particularly around those critical vulnerabilities, as well as being able to manage spend and stability. So this is really about understanding where we are and how do we continue navigating what we have at the moment, but also at the same time, how do we navigate and seize opportunities that are coming to market? We've all heard in recent years, digital transformation. We had the move there a couple of years ago around moving to the cloud, but also adopting some of those latest technologies and innovations. How do we move faster? How do we prove and understand the opportunities that AI can benefit our organizations, but also innovate at speed? And we see a lot of these challenges, we're sort of caught in the middle here, where we need to drive that organization of the future, while also maintaining what we have today and how our business operates. We can see, over the years, enterprise architecture has had defining moments. We've started with an ivory tower. We then moved into business transformation. And now we're seeing enterprise architecture is really leading that AI native approach in our organizations. What's that next moment? What's that next feature, that functionality that we're going to take advantage of? And how do we stay ahead of our competition? I mean, enterprise architects are really at the core of that. How do they come together? How do they bring what our organization needs to achieve from a business objective side and drive us into that new day and age that we need to operate against? We can also see that AI is rewriting the rules of our business. Traditional IT spend versus AI spend is exponential. Okay, 310% between 2023 and 2028 will be dedicated to AI, and this is just huge. And this doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, we're going in, we're putting in chatbots and we're putting in agents, but how are we going to navigate and adapt our organizations in a way that allows AI we can take advantage of and really allows us to optimize our business operations from there. And we can see that we want to bring together three critical imperatives for that AI era. Intelligent data by default. Okay? And this is core because our enterprise architecture data must be accessible, automated, and AI ready, because bad data in equals bad results out. We also need to lead with an outcome-led architecture. And this is important because we don't want to implement AI, or we don't want to make changes to our organization that are not driving an outcome that's good for business. So how do we show that value in business terms? How do we quantify that investment that we're making and to drive that outcome-led architecture? And the third pillar, enterprise architecture as the AI governance anchor. We see this day in, day out. I read this every day in a news article. Organizations are spending more than they realized on AI tokens. How do they operationalize AI in their organization? But they also need to be able to govern how it's being used. How do we ensure that our users are not creating agents that we're unaware of and therefore maintaining or putting company sensitive data in places that we're not able to control? So having enterprise architecture as that governance layer is critical to how we're moving into this AI native era. And we can see these are overlapping with the additional components that we have with pressure to reduce IT costs, IT spend optimization as well, but also overlapping applications. And we can see that a number of our enterprise architects and organizations, while starting to show that, hey, 85% of us reported an increased focus on reducing those IT costs because they're starting to take advantage of that AI native era. 10 to 30% of IT spending is considered avoidable in a lot of organizations. Okay, so this is something we need to start to address, but also while looking at 60% of our organizations cite redundant applications as a source for this avoidable IT spend. So again, how do we navigate moving into the future while also starting to address some of the dependencies and some of the redundant areas of IT that we can start to address today? And that's really where a lot of us as well, when we start to look at mergers and acquisitions as a key component of managing enterprise architecture, we see that a lot of mismanaged IT integration, visibility into their project costs, contributes heavily into the IT debt, the costs, as well as the underperformance of those processes in the future. Now, if we think about this, as we merge in or as we optimize our organization, either through an acquisition, through a merger, through a divestiture, or something as simple as a business transformation, we want to ensure that we're able to realize that business value up front. We want to ensure that we're aligned across that IT integration in our entire organization and that we have that visibility across all portfolios. What's happening in procurement, we need to be aware about, within our organization, just as we will with our manufacturing arms as well. How do we align our IT debt and our risks to not just look at licensing, but also support, maintenance, infrastructure costs as well, to ultimately optimize us into the future? And ensure that when our target architecture comes together, that our organization is aligned. Because we can see that when we are aligned, we can take advantage of these new features, these functionalities, or the new wave that AI is now presenting us going forward. Now, why does rationalization happen? Or why doesn't it happen when it particularly should? And we can see that a lot of organizations lack their transparency, their disjointed ownership. Unfortunately, I can't see everybody on the call right now, but I'm sure that if I was asked for a show of hands who has disjointed ownership and accountability in their organization, we would have quite the majority. And this is very common because a lot of organizations don't have those clear roles into managing those applications. We see different business units purchase applications. They make their decisions based on organizational politics and not the data that it should. I've seen organizations that have 2 or 3 procurement systems when they could have just done away with one. Okay, a decision that was made by individual business units based on their own politics and objectives ends up costing the organization, in this case, 3 or 4 times what it should to run a procurement system from there. Our teams are also under pressure and resource constraints and not focused around the long-term optimization. So keeping the lights on today versus how do we maintain this and automate this and optimize it for the future as well. And we see that a lot of our fragmented decision making, aligns us and helps us, or operates us in silos and slows down that alignment within our organization. And a lot of these areas are exactly what we're trying to address. Bringing visibility, bringing accountability together, and ultimately showing that business value faster within our organizations. We can see that when we look at rationalizing across the organization, we mentioned license, support, maintenance, but that innovation budget that we have is generally quite small today. We have our IT budgets. We would love to take advantage of everything, but they just don't stretch as far that we need to in order to innovate faster. So how do we start to reduce some of those license, support, maintenance costs so that we can take advantage of a larger innovation budget with our same IT budget that we have today? And this is critical because we're not looking to increase budgets and spend within IT. We're looking to optimize how existing budgets and spend are being leveraged, and ultimately bring down a lot of those cost areas that don't need it. Rationalize where we can through a continuous improvement cycle. No longer are we doing this once every 5 or 10 years, but we're doing this day in, day out. That continuous optimization allows us to take advantage of that same cost allocation in a much greater formality. Okay. We see beyond those cost savings as well, we start to look at higher operational efficiencies, reducing the complexity across that IT landscape and improving the data that our enterprise architects have to make those decisions. If we know exactly how our organization operates, we can make decisions that then lower our compliance risks. Okay, lower the applications with outdated or redundant software, ensuring that we're compliant and that we're not going to end up in the news or the media tomorrow on having a data breach or having something that was unpatched and we had a security incident. And ultimately bringing together both business and IT to align on those priorities. We can see that when we bring in the office of our CFO, Chief Operating Officer, and align where our business and organizations are going together with IT, we can share those visibilities and responsibilities as well. We know what the organization wants to achieve. How can we help support that? How do we map our applications to exactly what business capabilities they are delivering? Knowing what applications we have and the capabilities they offer, then lower a lot of our risks and our costs related to procuring additional applications within our organization. And we can see that app rationalization empowers our organizations to really win with those IT and strategic business goals as well. Now, this is a very busy slide, and I'm not going to go directly into it, but we can see this is a 7-step approach. And this doesn't take an enormous amount of time, I should say, and we are using industry assessments from Gartner in this case to not just understand our strategy. So something as simple as bringing that data into the products, understanding our applications in a very automated way and bringing this in a very short amount of time, but then being able to create and evaluate our roadmaps so that we can track this continuously. I have organizations that do this in a number of weeks, and they're able to then track this continuously day in, day out. When they have projects coming in, they can consolidate efforts and costs. So we're no longer going ahead with budgets, or we're no longer having to request additional funding. We can consolidate exactly what we're doing and achieve those execution milestones within our existing projects. And this is something that both our business and IT now have that visibility into our entire application architecture in the organization. We can see that when we do this across, post mergers, mergers and acquisitions, divestments, and spin-offs as well, that modernization transformation is continuous. We see where we're maximizing value, but also reducing a lot of those destruction risks as well. We can see that when we start to have integration between our organizations, between business, between IT, that we're starting to define what that architecture will be so that we can define those timelines, those roadmaps that we might have, and reduce and minimize those costs. We can map this out not just from a software side, also infrastructure support down to the people effort as well. Now, if we think about this, we talk about our budgets that we do have, not just from an infrastructure and architecture side, but also how our people are then spending their time. Less on maintaining our current as-is systems and more planning for the future. How do we take advantage of those new features and functionalities and reduce the complexity and the technical debt that we have within our organizations, not just in our day-to-day transformations, but also in our M&A scenarios as well. Now, this is not something that we can take away just from today with myself, but we can see LeanIX is a leader not just in G2, but also Gartner Magic Quadrant for Enterprise Architecture. And this is only getting greater and greater ahead of others in this space as well. So really taking advantage and being able to map not just the EA side that we have, but also how our business is coming together as well, so that we can have a single platform navigating business, IT, as well as how we're navigating and managing our AI governance into the future. And this is something where we can start to track, start to manage our existing, but also manage how we're leveraging AI, leveraging how our organization now spends in token count, agents that are being created, the governance around it, the models that they're using, so we can leverage this information in not just future support or future negotiations, but also understand exactly how it's being used and where we want to go in our organization. We can see here as well, external independent studies show a $1.3 million return per year in companies that leverage SAP LeanIX, a return on investment of 290% on average over 3 years with a 5-month payback period. So these are numbers that are not coming from us, but coming from IDC themselves, to understand that when we manage our application portfolio, the biggest benefit for IT is really understanding and being able to reduce that application management, improve our productivity, and ultimately the staff efficiency and the business performance at the end of the day. So this is something that the entire organization feels just from being able to manage and maintain those applications in a much more granular format as well. I do want to leave us just before we open for questions, but how others have done this. And we can see that when we start to look at First Abu Dhabi Bank as an example, being able to identify and reduce the application landscape by 25%. Now, if we think about this and you put your own organizations into the mix, what would a 25% reduction in applications mean to your business? What would the cost savings be if that was something that we were able to achieve? Because this is exactly how First Abu Dhabi Bank went against and started to see those rationalization efforts really pay off in a very short amount of time. We see this again with Media Market and Saturn, that 10% of all applications were able to be decommissioned within 12 months. So it's not something where we're looking at negatives, or we're looking at small percentages, but organizations are really being able to take advantage in a rapid format by leveraging SAP LeanIX in how they can reduce and manage those optimization steps within their organizations in a short amount of time as well. Brittany, I do want to open us up for some questions. I think we still have a couple of minutes here. So I want to give time if anyone has something, maybe they can come off mute or write into the chat as well.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Jack, for such an insightful presentation. As a reminder, audience members can still enter questions, and we can go ahead and review a couple that did come through. This first question asks, as organizations accelerate cloud and AI initiatives, where do you most often see enterprise architecture becoming a bottleneck or source of friction?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. I think a lot of the time it becomes when they're misaligned with the business. Business wanting to take advantage of new features, products that might be in a cloud environment, and enterprise architects are unaware how this is going to impact their existing landscape. IT is generally, the organization that's being told, what to do, versus being part of the decision and part of the table as to how they plan that for the future. And we've seen this. We've seen the business wants to do something, and IT is holding back either through red tape or politics, purely because those enterprise architects are unaware or unable to showcase those impacts in a way that would have been beneficial to the business in a rapid format. So really bringing together both business and IT, I know I've said this a lot today, we've seen has accelerated how organizations can really move faster into the future, and by leveraging tools that are able to provide that information in a rapid format, empowers those enterprise architects to make those decisions a lot faster as well.
Perfect. Thank you. On this next question, how can increased transparency across applications and business capabilities help reduce technical debt and improve decision making?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the major ones that I could think of is, if we have applications that are becoming end of life or end of support, the last thing that you want is a notification 2 days out to say, hey, this application is expiring, next week, or we're suddenly out of support, we're suddenly out of maintenance. I need to perform an upgrade. I now need to go and find budget. I need to go and find effort. I need to risk mitigate what this now means for my organization. So being able to showcase exactly when those applications come in or out of support in a visibility that allows us to say, well, I had 3 or 4 projects throughout the year that impacted this application. Why couldn't we combine something together? And looking at how that transparency happens within a tool in an automated manner allows us to reduce those impacts in future. If we are going through a transformation, I think the previous question around moving to the cloud, we can combine and bring that transparency to say, hey, I can reduce 3 or 4 other applications by maybe taking advantage of more of 1 or 2 other applications that already exist. So being able to consolidate functionality in small amounts while also being able to then benefit largely from those application reductions as well.
Great, thank you. And we have a couple more questions, including this next one that asks, what advice would you give CIOs who are struggling with fragmented IT landscapes while trying to modernize quickly?
Yeah, look, I would say try getting visibility of those fragmented landscape is going to really accelerate how we can, how you can modernize your organization going forward. Tools like SAP LeanIX, provide rapid insights, automatically bringing in those fragmented landscapes in a rapid format, so that you can make those decisions. You can see exactly which applications I have, which applications support Copilot, support Claude, support Anthropic scenarios, for example. So if you're thinking, hey, I need to spend the next 12 months understanding, cataloging, mapping out my applications, or we have products that are able to rapidly do this in a number of days, and provide that same outcome. Me as a CIO, I would much prefer to understand that information, within days, so I can then spend the time writing business cases and understanding how we can then make those decisions to optimize us into the future. A lot of organizations I talk to will provide and say, hey, look, this is our application landscape. We have 3, 4, 500 apps, are often significantly surprised by the amount of applications that then get discovered. Applications that they've thought were decommissioned, applications that they thought no longer existed, or applications they thought were being used in a very different way. We're now getting those insights in a rapid format, bringing that back to life, and showcasing areas very quickly that could reduce costs, could reduce support, maintenance efforts, that you may not have visibility on today. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think this is a good question, just
Mhm.
looking ahead to wrap up with. But looking ahead, what will distinguish organizations that successfully use architecture as a strategic enabler from those that treat it primarily as a documentation exercise?
I think those that are leveraging it as a strategic enabler are able to make decisions much faster. Um, yes, we're going to store data in a way that can be reported on very easily, and there will be a documentation part to it. But the benefits that you're having and the benefits that I see with our customers that leverage this are really the ones that are leveraging it for planning, leveraging where do I need to be in 12 months. What if I move to the cloud? What's going to be impacted? And I think being able to do that in a much, much faster manner allows those decisions, to be able to impact our organizations much quicker as well. And that's really the difference. You can run reports, you can have it as a documentation repository, the same way I can go and look online, where this information might be stored, when my applications expire, when the support agreements run out till, or I can leverage this into a tool, plan a project, plan a transformation, plan an initiative, and say, this is where I need to be in 12 months. How do I get there? How does my architecture evolve in order to meet this goal? And that's exactly where those benefits are going to come from.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much again, Jack. Those are all of the questions that we do have, but thank you for an excellent thought leadership. I also want to thank everyone else for joining. This session, along with all of today's content, will be made available on demand following the event. And our next session will begin shortly at 1:05 Eastern, which will be a keynote titled The Ceiling You Buy, the Discipline Behind Every AI Investment. So please remain on the stage, and the next session will begin automatically, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much again, Jack.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.